right side. I hope no one's disappointed. If it gets better on one side, just feel free to stand up and shift. It's okay. I don't get disturbed that much. I'm also going to try and use PowerPoint for the first time in my life, because usually I just kind of walk around and talk, and all of a sudden an hour's passed and we've all had a pretty good time. So, a plan for living. Who's Michael Weinberger, right? I am trying to figure out transitions. I am an amazing father. I'm a supportive and loving husband. I'm an entertaining and dynamic speaker. We're really going to actually prove that today. Hopefully we've started in the right direction. I'm a successful entrepreneur, and I'll talk more about that. And I'm pretty outgoing. I don't know, anyone that stopped by the booth definitely knows that I greet people by name and enjoy connecting with people. I struggle with suicidal ideations, negative self-image and jealousy, envy and negative self-talk. I'm probably going to leave here today feeling like $1 million and go to my house and feel like $1. So I just want everyone to understand, I'm not free from the illness, and I work every day to feel better, right? But a lot of people look at me and see success. I run support groups for individuals with mental illness. You know, I pull up in my fancy car, I look like I'm of privilege. You know, people look at me and are like, this guy's got high-class white guy problems. You know, what kind of problems could he possibly be bringing here? And the reality is, I have problems like everybody else.
Amen.
Right? There is no limit on who experiences them. I have an obsessive fear of failure, and I'm waiting to lose everything. And it is a difficult place to live. I'm also diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1, and I've had that diagnosis since 1994. So I'm not here giving you 2 months of experience. I'm here giving you 22 years of ups and downs and trials and tribulations. I also struggle with addiction and rage and impulse control, right? And so that's difficult when you're a father, when you're a business owner, when you're a speaker. Hopefully we're not going to experience any of that today. I'm optimistic. So I'd like to ask you guys a question up front, right? And I'm not asking for answers. I just like nods of heads and people laughing, right? So how happy are you? And how happy are you really, right? And do you believe that happiness is a choice, right? A lot of people do not believe happiness is a choice, and I'd like to kind of throw out a disclaimer for you. I used to believe that the outcome of this talk was going to establish my value for the rest of the day. I used to believe that if I couldn't get every single one of you to like me right now, I was worthless. So I guess the bad news for you guys, you don't have that control over me today.
All right.
I've decided to be happy today. I've also learned in my recovery that happiness, not only is happiness a choice, happiness is something that can only be, it can't be taken away, it can only be given away, okay? And so if we think about that for a moment, I choose to give away my happiness when I get upset, when I get irritated, when I get overrun by life's problems.
Amen.
Life's problems aren't taking away my happiness, I'm giving it to it. So I'd like to start with an example that I've learned that really helps me out. And I did this several times on the way into this room, because I find that if I'm not nauseous before I speak, I typically deliver a terrible talk, because I have too much ego and not enough humility, right? And so something I've learned in managing my life is this simple exercise, right? I'm going to breathe in the universe, and I'm going to breathe out myself, right? And so when I find myself struggling during the day, when I find myself struggling throughout life, I remember I'm not in charge. I have no control over life. So I simply breathe it in and I let go of my desire to control everything. I apparently do this so much that my 4-year-old daughter frequently says to me, she's like, "Daddy, you upset again?" I'm like, "Sweetie, I'm breathing, so I'm not upset." And I now have my kids at 4 and 2 years old taking deep breaths before they start to throw their tantrums. And it's the greatest thing to see my kids learn things that I didn't learn, right? Because I'm going to tell you about my story. And my story is inconsistent with the person you're seeing up here today, which is why I want to further validate and prove to you that change is possible, okay? And so for those people that don't suffer with a mental illness, I'd like to give you an example of how my bipolar disorder manifests itself. And it was really a simple example that was given to me. We're watching baseball. I don't know how many of you are fans of baseball. I'm not a fan enough to give this as a great example, but just work with me. Let's all pretend we care. I'm watching, it's the 9th inning. It's a full count. Your team is up to bat, and they have one pitch left that makes the game, okay? And the ball is pitched, and your player hits a home run. Well, what happens in the stands? We go crazy. We're screaming. We're excited. If you want to know what mania looks like, everyone else in the stadium sits down. I stay like this for 2 more weeks. No one says, "Hey, it's over. Come back." Now imagine the opposite. He strikes out. Everyone in the audience is, "Oh man, this is terrible." Well, now carry that to work with you, or carry that as a father for the next week. That's a feeling that I was unable to shake, and it was the best way I could understand to explain to people that didn't experience it themselves. That's what it's like for me. Man, this slides sideways. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to go through my story. And for those of you that haven't heard my story, I could talk more in detail later. I'm really here to focus on a story of hope. I simply want to offer some credibility to my experiences so you understand where I come from. Going over them in explicit detail is simply there for humor and entertainment. That's not what I want to do for my story. I started out with a misdiagnosis. In 1994, they brought me in and diagnosed me with attention deficit disorder. And for those of you not familiar, one of the treatment plans for attention deficit disorder is stimulants. Someone suffering from mania does not require stimulation. It's actually the last thing I required. I was already moving 100 miles an hour, and my treatment plan was like, "Let's spin faster." That plan failed. Ultimately, it was corrected, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and it took me over 15 years to become medication compliant. It took me over 20 combinations of medications to find what truly worked for me. I had a verbally and emotionally abusive father growing up. So I learned that rage and fighting was the solution to everything, right? Because if I exerted my force, I can get what I want. That's not how the world works. At least that's not how I choose to interact with the world today. And I want to be very clear here today. I'm only telling you things that work for me. They might not work for you. I'm telling you my story. In high school, I was thrown out of high school. Not with bad grades. I graduated in the top 10% of my class, but I couldn't sit still in the classroom long enough to work with the teachers. They couldn't manage me. And, you know, there's a spectrum on education. Again, my opinion. You know, you have the bottom 10%, and you have learning disabled in that spectrum. You have the middle 80%, and you have the top 10%. Well, the schools have figured out how to deal with the bottom 10. I still think there needs to be a lot of improvement there. The middle 80, And the top 10, they just leave us. We're bored, they can't teach to us, we're solving problems faster than they can come up with problems. And so what are we to do? Those of us with mood disorders get thrown out of class because I'm not going to sit there and wait. You know, a psychiatrist once explained to me that I interact with the world at 100 miles an hour. The world is interacting back with me at 10 miles an hour. So if you want to understand what that looks like, it's like listening to this presentation at this speed. That was my life before my medication started working. That was my life before I started practicing mindfulness and gratitude and realizing that the only thing I can control is myself. I can't make people speak faster. I can make myself listen slower. I started driving when I was 17 years old. I grew up in New Jersey. For those of you not familiar with New Jersey, it's about 2 times the size of this ballroom. I drove around that state 50,000 miles a year, every year for 4 years. If you want to know what that's like, it's like slapping your uncle high in the morning and goodbye at night. It's just one constant circle. I had my license suspended because I was most in control of my emotions and thoughts with the windows open, the music loud, driving 100 miles an hour. The world synced for me. It worked. I then made it to college, and I'll explain to you what college looked like in 80 minutes. Not 80 minutes of my presentation, 80 minutes. I went to University of Massachusetts as an honor student in engineering for 20 minutes. At the end of the first semester, I made what every good, logically based mind of a 19-year-old decides to do. I followed my girlfriend.
All right.
That was the way to do it. I then get to Binghamton University. This is the second 20 minutes. And for that 20 minutes, I was hired as the youngest teaching assistant ever hired by the university. That was a good 20 minutes. I was still in a relationship. Third 20 minutes, relationship ended. I was then the youngest teaching assistant ever expelled from the university. I left with a 3.9 and a serious drinking habit, right? I didn't believe in consequences. The world wasn't going to tell me what to do, and I knew best. I quickly learned that I did not know best. I called my mother 3 weeks before the end of my 3rd semester in college. And I said, Mom, I need you to come pick me up. And she says, Michael, there's 3 weeks left. I'll come get you at the end of the semester. I said, well, let me just, I don't think you understand. The police have moved me out of the dorm. I'm officially homeless. Tonight would be a better time frame. And I said to her, and by the way, I'm not really gonna talk about what's gone on. And so that's a pretty tough position to take with a parent, right? As a parent, what do? Well, I'll tell you, my mother came and picked me up, and she didn't talk about it. And we drove home in silence. Because at this point, she had made over a dozen trips to the school to pick me up at jail, to pick me up in the hospital, to pick me up with overdose attempts and self-harming behavior that she probably didn't want to know the details. She was probably just happier that I was coming home safe. The next morning, she wakes me up and she says, Michael, you don't need to go back to college today. Oh, that's great. I don't have to do that today, right? My goals are super low now. Today, I don't have to go to college, okay? And so she says, however, you're not going to sit here and do nothing. So you better get up and figure out something to do. Leave the house and go do something. And that's a really key element of what I'm about to talk about. Finally, I graduate from college, and this is where the mania kicks in. Okay, and so I'm going to go through the last block quickly. The mania kicks in. I graduate college, I get a job, a well-paying job. 6 months in, I tell my boss, I need you to triple my salary. Apparently that's not how the world works. Triple, you gotta triple it. I leave, I go to a new job. I triple my salary. I'm there for a year, I buy my first house. 2 weeks after I buy my first house, I quit my job. Because now I'm going to start a company, because I already have the house. I don't understand the concept of mortgage debt. I have a house, I go there, it's mine. Now I don't have a job, and I have a house. So it's like how not to grow yourself successfully or financially in any way, right? This is a lesson in what not to do. I then, while I'm at that job that I previously quit, I'm working 20 hours a day, every day of the week. Why? Because they understand I have a mental illness in some capacity. They never ask, but who works 20 hours a day that doesn't need to stop? My answer? Manic people, right? I didn't need to stop. I was driven by success. I was driven by a paycheck. So you gave me the carrot, I chased the carrot. I then fell off the wheel, started a new company. Company failed. I picked up and moved to Michigan from New Jersey. I didn't tell my family I moved to Michigan. It took 6 months for me to tell them, stop inviting me for dinner on Sundays. I live in Michigan. My family's like, when did you go? I'm like, 6 months ago. You guys are behind. And let me explain to you what goes on with my illness. It's not intentional deceit, right? It's not deceit at all. I'm having conversations with myself that I believe are being had with other people. How many times have I argue with my spouse on the way home from work. I then get there and I'm like, fine, I don't want any dinner. What dinner are you talking about? I'm like, the argument we just had. She's like, you were talking to yourself again. Well, I moved to Michigan on that basis. Okay? I then gained 150 pounds. I then met somebody in the elevator and I got married. Because what do you do when you're in the elevator? You either throw a party or you get married. I got married. I then lost 150 pounds. Because I went to the doctor and the doctor said, you're 26 years old. You're going to die of liver disease from your drinking and your drug abuse and your overdoses if you don't lose 100 pounds. So I joined Overeaters Anonymous. I go to a 12-step program. In 6 months I come back. I said, I lost 155 pounds. I said, what's next? He's like, I've treated over 3,000 patients. No one's come back. He's like, I really don't know what to tell you. He's like, definitely don't have surgery to remove your excess skin. So I had surgery. Immediately. Okay? I now maintain the weight loss for 2 years. I then gain 150 pounds. If you're looking for things not to do, don't buy a house and then quit your job and get married in an elevator, gain 150 pounds, lose it, gain it, and then lose it again. It's exhausting. So I'm here to tell you, someone was like, why am I listening to this guy? Like, this is insane. Well, I created a plan for living on the basis of the fact that I've tried a lot of ways to live. They weren't working for me. They were actually failing in such an epic way. Like, when I tell my story, if you guys could see this with your eyes closed, what are you expecting at the end of this story? Right? Somebody that didn't make it. I shouldn't have made it. But I end up getting divorced after my weight loss. I end up meeting my new wife in a 12-step program. For me, it was the greatest place to meet my wife because we both knew we had significant problems and issues to combat. And we both work at a program at home, which is fantastic. But let me move on. Something my mother taught me, and this is what I'm going to share with you as a key element in my life. My mother taught me from a very young age, you cannot decide how you feel from the comfort of your own bed. I would wake up in the morning and I'd say to my mom, I feel terrible, I can't go to school today. She's like, great, take a shower, I'll see you downstairs. I'm like, yeah, get downstairs. I get downstairs, I said, Ma, I still feel terrible, I don't want to eat breakfast. She's like, well, I guess you're going to school hungry. She's like, get in the car, we're going to school, and if you still don't feel well when you get back, then you can do your homework and you can go to bed. Because if you don't feel well, there's no time for friends. If you feel well, if you feel good enough for friends, you feel good enough for school. And I said, okay. And I'll tell you, I never missed a day of school. I'm still terrified to skip work. I'm 39 years old. I wake up and I'm like, Mom, I feel fine. I'll take a shower. It's okay. And so, what I just want to give everybody an example of is for anyone that woke up today that didn't feel well or didn't believe today was going to be good, and you've been sitting in my talk laughing, you should stop laughing, stand up, and leave. Because you would have missed out on this, right? You would have left this in exchange for the comfort of your bed. That's why I learned to wake up, because 2s turn into 8s. And let me explain. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning I am too depressed to leave my bed, 10, I am going to become the supreme ruler of the universe. Someone falls in that spectrum. I typically lately fall in like a 6 or 7 spectrum. But there's days I started at 2, you know? And so society has governed how we're supposed to feel, right? How many people know that Mondays suck, right? It's because society tells you Mondays suck. Well, today could be Monday. It doesn't suck, it's just another day. It's what you make of it. If you wake up with the question, how happy are you? And you start to genuinely reflect on that, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. Every day is the same. And let me tell you this. The reason why I know this works, I have a 4-year-old daughter. And we're home last Saturday. And she says to me, I'm not going out. I'm not going out today. And in Michigan, all we do on the weekends is go to cider mills. So we go for apple cider and donuts. Who doesn't want to leave their house on the weekend in Michigan? My daughter's like, I'm not leaving. I said, okay, well, get in the car and we'll see you at breakfast, right? Because that's what I know. And we bring her to the restaurant, and I said to her, sweetheart, you don't have to get out of your car, you don't have to eat, but you're not going to stop the rest of us from eating. You come into the restaurant and you just sit at the table and be quiet. And you can watch us eat. I'm not going to require you to eat, but I'm going to require you to start your day. Because that's where the wiring of the brain starts, right? The wiring of the brain starts says you get up, you start moving. In 2 minutes, she ordered chocolate milk. I said, well, don't you feel lousy? I'm like, you just felt too sick to leave the house. She's like, well, I'd love some chocolate milk. I said, well, do you remember how you used to feel? She said, Daddy, I don't know what you're talking about. I want some chocolate milk. Okay, that's my point. You've succeeded. I put medication slip up there. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I'm going to leave that and keep moving on. It's like someone typed these slides for me, and I'm now seeing them for the first time. It's like you see them, I see them. I'm like, what do you guys like that stuff? So let me explain to you what a plan for living is about. A plan for living, actually, we're going to go back. I now know what my medication slip-up is. In 2015, my pharmacy, online pharmacy, sent me the wrong medication. Sent me the wrong dosage. Same number of pills, wrong dosage. It was an older script. I started taking that script because it was the same number of pills. And we'll get into the fact that I might not be terribly detail-oriented, as evidenced by this slide. But I just took the pills. And after 4 months, I started to feel very suicidal. And I'm used to having a crisis every 3 years, right? I'm used to getting a little wobbly. But I was suicidal. And I go to my doctor and he says, increase your med from 150 milligrams to 450 milligrams. From 300 to 450. And I call him up, I said, I'm only on 150. And he says, well, you've been self-reporting 300. My scripts say 300. What are you talking about? Long story short, I end up getting put on another medication, up to 450. And I spent 4 months of 2015 on full-blown suicide watch. I am texting my friends that if I didn't have kids, I would kill myself. That's where I was, right? Same guy here telling you jokes. That's where I was. August 31st, I have a text message to a buddy of mine where he said, I'm coming over. I said, well, don't. It's not worth it. I said, I've got kids. I'm going to live through today. And during that course of 2015, I was never hospitalized. I woke up every day and I would use my support system. And I was driving to work, and my business partner calls me, and he says, I'm hysterical. He says, where are you going? I said, I'm going to work. I don't know anything different. He's like, well, you should take a week off. Well, if we just reflect on that for a moment, what's the best place to send somebody with suicidal ideations? Home, alone, to their bedroom for a week to regroup. That is not safe. I only know to keep moving. Because you know what? I'm going to overcome that feeling. I might not that moment, but they pass, right? Let me give you a visualization. If you're standing on a freeway, this is not a great example after talking about suicide. You're standing on a safety enclosed freeway and you're watching cars pass. Some of them are good feelings. Some of them are bad feelings. They all pass the same, right? They pass. They're just a feeling. I knew the feeling was going to pass. He says, well, are you going to go into the meeting crying? I said, well, if they're buying tears, I'm selling them because I don't know any different. I finally had to get on the phone. We'll talk about how I resolved that issue later, but that's exactly why I put that there. I feel like we've got a good pace right now. Let me talk about a plan for living. I've been in therapy for 32 years. My parents got divorced. I went to therapy. Seemed fair. Seemed like the right solution to the marriage. I had a lot of anger and rage issues, and I had to be treated for my mental illness. And I started to learn all of these different treatment options, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. I learned 12-step recovery from a nice judge in New York. And mindfulness, right? And so these are empirically supported treatments that work if used in the right situation, right? I created a plan for living to fill the gap around those treatments. A plan for living is not a replacement for your treatment, it's a complement, okay? And the program, the app, is about rewiring your brain to reduce stress that occurs in everyday life, right? What am I all about? I'm about decreasing stress and anxiety and frustration and irritation. That's an ideal life for me. That's happy. Mindfulness, in addition, can be practiced in as few as 10 to 15 seconds and as frequently as you wish, right? There's this whole mindfulness movement. Let's get fancy pants and redecorate our house and light candles. That's not mindfulness for me. Mindfulness is, I'm just downregulated. I've changed my mood. Everyone's got problems. I can look around. I don't want to say that I'm confident you all do. I'm fairly confident. I can tell you I'm here because I got problems. That's cool, right? And so what I just want everyone to understand is we're going to leave here happier than when we got here. And we're going to leave here with the same number of problems. I'm not going to fix your problems. I'm just going to change how you look at your problems. So when I look at my problems, I could have a mental health diagnosis that I'm not willing to accept. I could try and parent a 4-year-old and 2-year-old. I literally sent myself to a timeout and told my wife I'll come out as soon as I could be an adult. That was my situation a couple days ago. Divorce, burnout, stress, addiction, weight loss, weight gain, college, employment, relationships. If I haven't touched on something for somebody, you should see me afterwards. I'll find your problem. There's a lot of stigmas out there associated with traditional solutions, right? You have employee acceptance programs, you have support groups, you have friends and family, you have self-medication. And it's kind of weird. Why would you put that up there as a traditional solution? Drinking is sometimes a traditional solution for people. Let's not hide it. Let's not shy from that. That's a fact. Prescribed medication, self-help groups and 12-step and therapy. These are all your traditional solutions, and they all have common stigmas, right? They have judgment, they have shame, they have availability and expense, and they're time-consuming, right? You might not, there's a lot of benefits of 12-step recovery out there, but you might not feel that you're at the point where you need to stand up and tell everybody your first name and your problem. And that's okay. That's not the first step to solving your problems, but their principles are very well founded. There's a lot of them you could benefit from before you become an addict. So, what's the purpose? I just showed you some common ways. Medication and therapy fix me, right? I mean, there's the be-all, end-all. I've been in therapy for 32 years. I've been on medication, actual medication, for 6 years. I should be better, but I'm not. Why? Right? The purpose of medication is to create an upper and a lower bound. And I'll explain that. Let's say everybody, whether you're medicated or not, has a happiness high of 10 and a sadness low of negative 10. Medication is there to help keep you between positive 10 and negative 10. I'm going to try and keep my language as clean as possible. But you want to know what a negative 8 feels like? It feels like shit. Okay? And your medication is not going to take you out of that negative 8. Your desire to not want to be in a negative 8 is going to help you get through that. However, your medication is going to keep that negative 8 from becoming a negative 20, because a negative 20 feels a lot worse, right? Medication is simply there to be the guardrails, right? My goal is to get down to the end of the highway. It doesn't mean I'm going to drive in the center lane without weaving, right? That means sometimes I'm going to have to pass some guy that's driving too slow in the fast lane, right? Or weave or miss a pothole or do something. Medication is there to keep me moving forward. What's the purpose of therapy? I ask myself that every time I get a bill. Right now it's to pay the therapist. However, the purpose of therapy is to learn coping strategies, right? To challenge your thoughts and behaviors, to learn skills and tools that you can take with you to improve your life. Well, let me explain to you how therapy works. I feel like I'm saying some pretty neat stuff here today.
That's right.
And if you don't take it with you and think about implementing it into your life, tomorrow you won't remember my name, and next Saturday you won't remember this conference, right? Because that's how it works. If we don't integrate things into our lives, they don't become part of us, right? If I read an article on how to run a marathon, and I don't print that article out and write down what I have to do and put it in my pant pocket, and then take that article out tomorrow and read it again and do it again. You want to know the odds of me running a marathon? None. Right. I will never run that marathon. So, here's a question I have for everybody. Do you want to be happy, or do you want to be right? Because in order to be happy, you got to give up being right, because right doesn't matter. Right's a state of mind. My second marriage is much better because I prefer to be happy. My first marriage is over because I was right. I used to deal with lots of anger at my past, and I used to deal with lots of anxiety and fear about the future. And here's my question for you. How much anger do I need to exert today to stop the hurricane? If you have the answer, your presentation's next. But the answer is none, right? How much do I have to exert in order to change my future? None. Anxiety and worry don't change futures. Action change futures. And I used to believe that everyone else had everything they wanted and more. I would sit up here and look at everyone in this room and think, man, you guys got it great. right? Because you're not me. That's a genuine feeling I have. And if you have that feeling when you look at the world, everyone has those insecurities. Some people take meds for them, some people don't. Everyone has that. And so my question is, what if everyone else wasn't having an easier time than me? Right? What if everyone wasn't as successful as I perceive them to be? So, the next example I'd like to offer you is from a therapist that said to me, that asked me a question, because I would go into therapy and I would look at 60-year-old men and want to know, how soon was I going to have everything that 60-year-old man had? Their money, their retirement, their vacations, their everything. When was I going to be there? My doctor's like, when you're 60. I'm like, well, I'm in my 20s. I don't have enough weeks between now and then. I'm not going to make my 60s. So how do I fix that today? And he's like, well, let me explain to you how things work. How are buildings built? One brick at a time. When I focus on building the penthouse, my building sucks. Because all the floors beneath it are deficient and inadequate and cannot exist. It cannot sustain the building. I was trying to build my life from the top down. When I stopped building my life from the top down, and I started building it from the bottom up, my life became amazing. Because I was focused on when I was going to retire. I wasn't focused on when I was going to see my daughter being born. I wasn't focused on when I was going to see my son being born, right? I wasn't focused on the fact that my business has been slowly growing, right? I was focused on when was I going to have an X size company. Well, all of a sudden I have half an X. Well, it's pretty good, right? And so when I started to focus on, when I look down, I'm 39 years old. When I was in my 20s, I had 2 employees, I was struggling, I was still working to get by. My 39th birthday was unimaginable. When I look back, I have 36 employees. I have a business. I have things that I wanted. Well, I was focusing on my wants, right? And I'm going to skip ahead real quick. As children, we focus on our wants. There's no course that says, hey guys, today's the day you become an adult. So let's start focusing on our needs. We spend our entire life chasing our wants. We believe our needs will be taken care of. I can assure you, based on hospitalizations and overdoses and everything else, your needs don't just get taken care of. You have to make a conscious decision to go after them. Let me go back to the slides, because I feel like they're there for a reason. Am I my diagnosis?
No.
Right? I'm not my diagnosis. I happen to be fortunate to experience life as someone with bipolar symptoms. That's an amazing life. The lights are brighter, the colors are brighter, the sounds are louder, right? I get to experience this life. I get to wake up every day and be reminded that I have to work on myself. Well, you know the guy that needs to become a marathon runner, right? That guy's never going to become a marathon runner because he's not waking up being reminded every day to run. You know why I'm going to become more mindful? Why I'm going to be happier than the next guy? Because every day God's like, I gave you this because I knew you weren't going to remember. I knew you weren't going to remember that you needed to work on yourself. So here are symptoms you have to manage. Okay, well, I get up, I ask myself the question. But I'll tell you, I used to suffer from conditional happiness, right? Conditional happiness. I used to believe that when things happened, I'll be happy. When all of you come up and praise me afterwards and give me hugs and tell me how brilliant I am, that's when I'll be happy. Well, no, that's not. I'll be happy right now. I could shut my laptop down and walk out of here happy. Not even knowing what my feedback was. I would like to see what the survey said. And let's be honest, this could be pretty good. But come on, I'm sick. Anyway, I suffer from conditional happiness. I used to use my diagnosis as a scapegoat. I used to say, well, I'm bipolar, so therefore, this is why I can't do this. I can't go to this social event because I'm bipolar. No, I can't go to this social event because I feel like crap. That's different. Own that. Now, I want to ask you another question, because this is another important principle. Act as if, right? When you need to act as if, people say they're going to be happy when X, Y, Z happens. Well, if you're going to be happy, think about it for yourselves. When are you going to be happy? When you lose weight? When your meds are working? When you acquire something? Well, what if we act as if that thing happened already? Right? I'm trying to lose weight. What if I act as if I've already lost the 20 pounds I'm upset about not losing? Are you going to experience this any better? Am I going to give you a better message if you had what was going to make you happy? No, it's the same message. I'm just helping clear up the noise in your head. So, I was flagged. I was waved at, so I need to move faster. I'm used to at least a 55-minute therapy session where I get to sit here and talk. Everyone just kind of looks at me. So anyway, let me talk about the happiness formula, okay? Here's the happiness formula. Gratitude plus spirituality plus mindfulness equals awareness, and awareness equals happiness. What's gratitude? Gratitude is anything you're grateful for, right? It's simple. I'll tell you how difficult it was for me when I went to therapy the first time. My psychologist said, what are you grateful for? I'm like, I'll be grateful when this session's over. Okay, well, it's one thing. Now, I'm grateful for my marriage, my life, my sense of humor, my diagnosis, my medications, my doctor, the fact that I'm presenting here today, right? I'm grateful for my weight loss, for my healthy kids, right? I'm going to try. What is spirituality? Spirituality is anything that you can't control in the universe. That's what it means to me. It is not religion. For me, I will define spirituality as anything I can't control. If you're unsure of whether you're able to practice spirituality, this is my test. Have you ever needed to get on a scale to weigh yourself? And has that experience ever looked something like this? When you walk over to the scale and you walk up and then you're like, you look down, you're like, I can't believe the number went up. Well, you've just ate like crap for 3 months. The number only goes up. It only goes up. If you don't know if you could be spiritual, my question is, who were you talking to? Because whoever that was, that guy's going to help you. I promise you. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is stopping yourself in the present moment and becoming aware of the situation, right? You cannot undo the past, right? So if you're cut off with road rage and you have anger, how much anger do you need to become uncut off? That's mindfulness for me. What's awareness? Unfortunately, we're just going to look to a definition dictionary for that one. Awareness, you become aware of your surroundings. You become aware of everything you have that's positive. What's happiness? Happiness is not Mary Poppins smiles and umbrellas and music and Skittles, right? That's not happiness. That's mania or delusions, okay? Happiness for me, here's an example. I've just given you the definition of the happiness formula. I can assure you, you all have problems. How many of you, while I've been talking for the past 2 minutes, have thought about their problems? No one. No one's thought about their mortgage. No one's thought about the relationships that aren't working. No one's thought about the scale. Everyone's thought about, man, I want this formula. We'll come back to that. That's a shameless plug. I get it. So what's the purpose of a plan for living? Exercise is for the body. A plan for living is exercise for the mind, right? When you want to rewire your brain and how you think, the benefit of exercise, you spend less energy thinking about how to do it. Why does the military do exercises? So when they're challenged, they don't have to remember how to load their gun. Why do professional athletes exercise? So when the buzzer's going to ring, they don't have to remember how to dribble a basketball, right? If you want to be happy, you can't start practicing happiness after you lit your house on fire and you're trying to figure things out. You have to practice happiness when you're not sad, when every day you practice it. Unfortunately, I've been flagged, so I just want to see if there's anything I want to tell you. So real quick, the app is available online. It walks you through the happiness formula every day. It helps you meet your goals and your targets. It shows you that the more grateful and more spiritual you become, the more aware of your mind you become, the happier you are. It helps integrate existing treatment modalities, so you can take what you're learning in therapy and practice that. And on my table right outside, I have my business card, my personal cell phone. I answer personal questions, emails, and phone calls. So you are welcome to reach out to me. I actually talk like this all the time, not just when I'm presenting. And if you have questions, I will fortunately answer your questions after this presentation. Thank you very much.